Deep in the Russian forest, through the thick snow and the profound winter silence, pilgrims would travel for days. They came carrying heavy burdens of grief, confusion, and fear. When they reached the clearing, they did not find a severe hermit who turned them away. Instead, they were met by an old, bent monk in a simple white tunic, his face shining with an extraordinary light. He would bow deeply, his arms crossed over his chest, and greet them with the words, "My joy, Christ is risen." This joy was not a natural optimism. It was not easy or sentimental. It was a peace forged in decades of extreme cold, silence, and intense spiritual warfare. His name was Saint Seraphim of Sarov, and his life stands as a witness that the human heart can become a vessel of divine light. Long before he was known as the Father of Joy, he was Prokhor Moshnin, born in the city of Kursk in 1754. His father was a wealthy merchant who began building a grand cathedral dedicated to Saint Sergius, but he passed away when Prokhor was still a young boy. His mother, Agafia, took over the construction, and Prokhor spent his childhood surrounded by the sights and sounds of the building site, scaffolding, stone, and the distant ringing of bells. One day, while visiting the half-finished cathedral, the 7-year-old Prokhor accidentally fell from the top of the high bell tower. According to the hagiographic tradition, onlookers rushed to the ground expecting him to be dead, but they found him standing unharmed, preserved by a grace they could not yet see. At the age of 10, Prokhor fell dangerously ill, and his family feared he would not survive. During his sickness, he saw the Mother of God in a dream, promising to heal him. A few days later, a heavy rainstorm swept through Kursk. A religious procession carrying the miraculous Kursk root icon of the sign was forced to detour through the Moshnin family courtyard. Agafia carried her sick son out into the rain and pressed him against the icon. From that very hour, Prokhor began to recover, his strength returning rapidly. The tradition remembers this event as a defining turning point, confirming to his mother that her son's life belonged to the service of God. As Prokhor grew into young manhood, the desire for the monastic life burned brighter in his heart. When he turned 19, he resolved to leave Kursk and enter the monastery. His mother did not weep or try to hold him back. Instead, she gave him her blessing and handed him a heavy copper cross, which she hung around his neck. Prokhor accepted it with deep reverence, promising never to take it off. It would remain on his chest through all his future trials, a physical reminder of his mother's blessing, his vows, and the protective hand of God in the deep wilderness. Prokhor traveled first to Kiev to seek guidance from the holy elders who lived in the caves. There, a recluse named Dosify told him, "Go to Sarov. That is the place where you will find salvation." Prokhor set out on the long road north, walking through endless forests, cold winds, and unfamiliar villages, carrying nothing but his copper cross. In 1778, he arrived at the Sarov Hermitage, a remote monastery surrounded by dense forests. He was received as a novice, entering a world of strict discipline, prayer, and silence. In the monastery, Prokhor quickly learned that holiness does not begin with grand spiritual experiences, but with humble obedience. He was assigned the most ordinary tasks, baking prosphora bread, working in the carpentry shop, and acting as a cell attendant for the older monks. He did not complain or seek attention. He used his work as a form of active prayer, his mind constantly focused on the Jesus prayer. The elders observed his patience and his quiet joy, recognizing that the young novice was building a solid foundation of humility that would protect him from the spiritual pride that destroys many seekers. Not long after entering the monastery, Prokhor was struck by dropsy, a painful illness that caused his entire body to swell. He suffered in his cell for 3 years, unable to move without assistance. The monastery superior, fearing for his life, wanted to bring in a medical doctor. But Prokhor refused, saying, "I have surrendered myself, Father, to the true physician of souls and bodies." According to the monastic life, the Mother of God appeared to him in a vision alongside Saint Peter and Saint John, saying of Prokhor, "He is of our lineage." She touched his side with her staff, and the fluid drained from his body, leaving him completely healed. After 8 years as a novice, Proctor was tonsured as a monk in 1786. He was given the name Seraphim, a word that means burning or fiery in Hebrew. It was a name that perfectly described his inner state. His heart burned with a fiery love for God. He was ordained as a hierodeacon and later as a priest, serving at the altar with such intense devotion that he often saw angels celebrating the liturgy with him. Yet, despite these graces, Seraphim felt a growing call to leave the monastery walls and enter the absolute silence of the wilderness. With the blessing of his superior, Seraphim walked out of the monastery and built a small wooden cabin deep in the Sarah forest, naming it Mount Athos. He lived in utter simplicity, wearing the same white tunic, growing a small garden, and keeping a strict rule of prayer. He lived in peace with all of creation. The hagiography recounts that wild animals, including a massive forest bear, would quietly approach his cabin, sitting at his feet while the elder fed them bread from his hand. In the silence of the forest, the ancient peace of Eden seemed to be restored. Spiritual peace is not one without struggle. Seraphim faced severe temptations and physical trials. One day, 3 thieves confronted him in the woods, demanding money. Although he was strong and holding an axe, he remembered the words of Christ and laid his weapon on the ground, refusing to resist. The thieves beat him brutally, leaving him for dead and breaking his back. Seraphim crawled back to the monastery, where he recovered but remained bent and hunched for the rest of his life. He forgave his attackers completely, refusing to let them be punished, choosing instead to carry his physical deformity as a cross. To overcome the thoughts of despair and temptation, Seraphim undertook a feat of endurance that would become legendary. For 1,000 days and 1,000 nights, he knelt on a large stone in the forest, his hands raised to heaven, repeating only the prayer of the publican, "God, be merciful to me, a sinner." Through the freezing winter wind and the biting summer insects, he stood firm. This was not a performance to win praise, but a desperate battle to empty the self so that the grace of the Holy Spirit could take complete possession of his soul. After 30 years of solitude, enclosure, and absolute silence, the doors of Seraphim's cell finally opened. He returned to the monastery to receive visitors, acting as a starets, a spiritual father. Thousands of people from every class, peasants, soldiers, nobles, and seekers, came to his door. He saw the secrets of their hearts, offering comfort, counsel, and healing. He showed them that the goal of the Christian life is not just the keeping of rules, but the acquisition of the Holy Spirit, a grace that fills the soul with warm, unceasing joy. In January of 1833, at the age of 78, Saint Seraphim was found in his cell kneeling before an icon of the Mother of God, his soul having peacefully returned to his Creator. 70 years later, in 1903, he was formally canonized by the Church in a grand service attended by Tsar Nicholas II and hundreds of thousands of pilgrims. His relics became a source of countless miracles, and his memory spread to every corner of the Christian world. Today, the words of Saint Seraphim continue to echo, "Acquire a peaceful spirit, and thousands around you will be saved." His life stands as a reminder that the greatest work we can perform is the quiet transformation of our own hearts. When we find peace with God, that peace overflows to all who meet us. This is the Saints. Stories of faith, hope, and grace. Please support this work by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a comment. Thank you for watching, and may the joy of Saint Seraphim fill your heart.